Hey Spain lovers, so moving to Spain is full of a lot of challenges. There are legal challenges, emotional challenges, family challenges, and today we're going to cover 7 of the biggest challenges that people face or expect to face when they move to Spain. So as you may know, Yoli and I have recently launched our 8-week online Move to Spain Masterclass. This is a masterclass, an online course that's going to give you the tools, the knowledge, the roadmap to really make your move to Spain successful and set up your ideal life here. And by the time this video is released, we're actually already running the first intake of the course, which is completely sold out.
And as preparation for this wonderful masterclass, we asked you guys what the biggest challenges are for, when it comes to moving to Spain. And we got so many responses, 300 of them.
Yeah.
And while 300 is too many, so we're not gonna be covering all of them, but we're going to cover 7 of the biggies, the ones that consistently showed up in there, and we're going to make sure that all of that is pretty clear.
And before we dive in, if you want to take this course in the future, click the link in the description below so you can get on the wait list of people for future intakes. All right, should we dive into the 7 problems, concerns, challenges of moving to Spain?
Let's do it.
All right, venga, let's go. So number 1, where are you going to live in Spain? This is obviously a big challenge you have to figure out and overcome, because where you live will really set up how much you enjoy your experience here. It really is critical. So what we've found is people generally gravitate to 4 different areas of Spain. I think the most obvious one is Andalusia. When people think of life in Spain, they think of a lot of the imagery of Andalusia, they think of the weather. And so we're seeing a lot of people who want to move to Malaga, that province within the Andalusia Comunidad.
I can't blame you guys.
Yoli, yeah. It is a beautiful place. And Malaga is great because the Costa del Sol, for example, has great infrastructure. It's a beautiful part of Spain. You've got the Mediterranean right there. But what we are also seeing is more people starting to say, well, maybe I want to move to the Costa de la Luz, which is over to the west and is a little less built up. You'll be more around more Spaniards rather than a population of people that are Spaniards and people who have moved to Spain as well.
Yeah.
So I think a little bit more undiscovered in a sense. It's around the Cadiz area. We're seeing that as well. And I would also say the second area is Valencia. Valencia is really huge, and I think what we're seeing is a lot of people are starting to think that maybe instead of Barcelona, they would move to Valencia.
Yeah.
It might be a more livable place. There's concerns in Barcelona with just the cost of living being expensive. Valencia is cheaper. And the other thing that you're going to find is Barcelona is if you're in the center, obviously it's a really touristy city. So Valencia is maybe a little cheaper, more manageable, warmer in the winter because it's further south. So we're seeing that as well in Valencia. I mean, in preparing this, I was looking at Valencia. I was like, I want to move to Valencia.
Oh, really?
Make paella in Valencia. Sorry, Madrid.
See you around there, I guess.
Don't worry, Madrid is also on the list. It is a hot one. Madrid and Barcelona.
Madrid?
Yeah. Madrid and Barcelona are also on the list, and people tend to go and kind of group those together because they want to be in a big bustling city. So it's sort of deciding between those two, and we dive in the course and really look at the differences between those two. And I think the last one, which is interesting, there was more people than I expected who want to move to northern Spain, what we call green Spain. Galicia, Asturias, País Vasco, the Basque country, a number of people talk about San Sebastian. They've been there, had great food. It's a beautiful town. Expensive up there in San Sebastian.
Yeah.
But
Prepare your wallet.
Yeah, totally.
So for many people, this is about how long they can stretch their retirement money, right? So it's very, very important to have a really good idea about the cost of living in Spain. So it's gonna depend on your lifestyle, but also in the region where you're gonna live. So most expensive regions are, for example, the Basque Country, Madrid, Catalonia is pretty expensive as well. Cheapest regions are Extremadura and Castilla y León, more or less. And then there's other areas that are also cheaper, not the cheapest, but cheaper. Say Malaga, Valencia, Asturias, Galicia. Those are more affordable. Now there is this website called Numbeo, and it's pretty helpful when it comes to figuring out what your cost of living is going to be. So it allows you to go in there and do a comparison between the place where you live in the United States or the United Kingdom or wherever you are, and the place that you are looking at or considering, and even also comparing cities within Spain, see what is cheaper and what's more expensive. I did find it a little bit wonky, so we have developed our own cost of living tool, which is pretty
It's in the
cool.
course.
It's pretty cool, yeah. So we decided for the masterclass, and it has a bunch of variables, of course. So for us, for Madrid, a couple living in Madrid with our lifestyle, I guess, which is neither very rich neither very poor, in between. 2,500 with a mortgage, with a 1,000 euro mortgage, paying
Yeah.
there every month.
But that's not bad. 2,500 euros to live in with a
Exactly.
mortgage in Madrid, and you can think that's one of the most expensive
Exactly.
regions.
Always bear in mind that Madrid is one of the most expensive places to live in Spain.
So number 3, another bunch of comments we got from people is that they're overwhelmed by the paperwork that they're going to need to apply for their visa. Now, if you don't live in the EU already, you will need to apply for a visa to move to Spain. One of the most common ones that we see from people, say the United States or Australia, New Zealand, UK, is the non-lucrative visa, which is a visa that you have to show that you have a certain amount of funds available to support your life in Spain, and you can't work while you're in Spain. But here's the trap or the tricky area. The law that creates this non-lucrative visa is, it's one law, it says one thing. But when you want to get it, you have to apply to the consulate where you live. There's a few in Canada, there's a few in Australia, there's probably 1 or 2 in New Zealand, but there's many in the United States, for example, and some in the UK. And when you apply to that, those consulates, they apply the law in different ways. So if you're applying to the Chicago consulate,
They're very different ways sometimes.
very different. The Chicago consulate might have one type of requirements, the Los Angeles one slightly different. All around the same kind of idea, but quite important differences. So one of the key things with the non-lucrative visa is that you have to show that you have all these funds, either savings or income, although that's a bit fuzzy, that you can support your life here. And here's the thing, the law says how much you need per person and per additional people in your family. However, for example, the Washington, D.C. consulate actually requires less than the law. And they actually don't even write that properly on the requirements. So
They figure you don't need to know anyway.
they change the requirements, and also they don't explain the requirements. So you really have to dig in there. And that's what we do in the courses. We really go and look at the different variables here. And so that's one of the challenges. The other one is how you make up that income. Ideally it's savings, or it can be retirement money. There are some consulates that will allow passive income. Remember, you're not allowed to work on that visa, but they'll allow, maybe you have a blog or something like that, but others will not allow that at all.
So
it's
passively earn money.
exactly.
Is that feasible?
Yeah, passively earned money. It is feasible. It's a bit of a pipe dream, but less work than active income. And just getting on top of all the paperwork is really hard. When you submit your application to the consulate, there's certain key documents that can be no older than 90 days old from the date of application. So you really have to hustle in that 3-month period to get all this, criminal background check together. So we go through all this in the course, but I understand that that's really overwhelming for people. And the key is to be organized, to know what you need and be really organized.
Yeah, checklists.
Checklists.
Right, so the next challenge is the real estate process. And of course, it can be very, very daunting to buy a house in a country that is not yours. And first of all, you need to know that you guys, as future residents of Spain, you can buy a home. You can even buy a home not being a resident in Spain. One of the things that people find very confusing is the whole fees. So taxes and fees that you're going to be paying on top of the purchase price. So this is usually between 10 and 15% of the purchase price, but it depends on whether you got a real estate agent involved or whether you got a lawyer involved. So all of these variables are always there.
Also, the region changes, and whether it's new or secondhand, it's
so
kind of all over the
depending on
map.
the region, you're going to be paying more or less taxes, and depending on whether it's new or not, it's going to have a different kind of tax and a different percentage. So all of those things need to be taken into account as well. Another question that we got a lot is real estate agents. What's the deal in Spain? Now you have the barrio real estate agents, the ones that you find around the corner there.
See one there.
And those ones sometimes, most of the time they come attached to the really cool house that you saw on Idealista and that you want to buy. And they are attached to it, and there's no way to get rid of them. So I'd say that the big problem with this kind of agents is that they don't really have a huge percentage of properties of the market. They just have a small corner. So if you're like, I'm interested in like a first floor with a terraza, with an outside area, they're gonna show you maybe 2. So there's another kind of agent that is the agent that is specialized in people that are moving to Spain. So of course they will speak English, and a lot of the time they will act as a buyer's agent. So they will have access to the whole market, and they will have a really wide range of properties to show you according to the briefing that you have given them, which is very, very handy. Now the real estate agent fees are all over the place. It varies regionally, whether it's the seller that pays the fee or whether it's the seller and the buyer that pay the fee. So a little bit tricky there,
Very
but you'll get there.
So a lot of people also wrote to us and said that they were a little overwhelmed by the idea of how they could work in Spain. Now, in the course, we don't cover precisely how to get a job because that's a whole other process, but we do cover the work visas that are available and how you might be able to achieve them. And some of the most common ones, there's the entrepreneur's visa, the self-employment visa, and there's also getting a work permit by virtue of being sponsored by a company. But those are actually quite challenging ones to do. For the entrepreneur visa, for example, you actually really have to be doing a startup or something quite similar.
I invented the wheel, guys.
Pretty much, and only if it's an app. And then the self-employment visa, if you're applying for that, you have to show a business plan. And then for getting a work visa to be sponsored by a company, that job or the role you're going to do has to be on a skills shortage list. So those are quite limited. But there are other routes. Another route, for example, is to get the golden visa. This is the one where you buy property worth 500,000 euros or more in Spain. That gives you a work visa. But I realize that for most people, that is, out of your reach. But there is another way, is if you come on a non-lucrative visa, remember that's the really common one, and you can't work on that visa, but after a year on that visa, you can transition to a self-employment visa or to a work visa working for a company. And those transitions are easier than if you had applied for those self-employment or work visas from your home country in the first place. There's also the student visa, although that is a longer path because you have to be on that student visa. You can work at the same time, although only about 20 hours a week. And you have to be on it for 3 years before you can transition to kind of a full work visa.
And study, you have to study.
That's true. If you don't want to go back to school, that's a bad idea. Yeah, I hope that they loosen these up in the future and allow people to work remote in Spain and pay taxes, and I think there's a lot of people who want to do that because they're location independent, particularly after COVID. But right now it's still a little narrow in that area. Okay, and connected to working and the whole idea of money are taxes. Now, I just a little pet peeve here. I get very annoyed when people complain about taxes. I love paying taxes because it's taxes that create the great healthcare that, is looking after our baby. It pays for the road out there. So I'm going to push back against the whole anti-tax thing. I love paying taxes.
Ole.
There you go. Anyway,
he said it.
Anyway, taxes. But what I don't like about taxes is they're very complicated to figure out. And so when it comes to the world of taxes here in Spain, you have to really do your homework before you move here. And for a lot of people who are retired and moving here, taxes are important because you've got to figure out how long is that pool of money, that retirement money, going to last, or how far is it going to go? Really important. Now, people freak out a lot when they see higher income tax rates in Spain, but some of the tax experts I've spoken to have said, and although this will vary, had said for some of their cases, some of their clients, they find that the total tax they end up paying is actually quite similar to their home country. It's just the mix and the concepts are a little bit different.
Right.
So we cover those in the course. We go over the different concepts and how they kind of work. But one of the key things is if you're in Spain for 183 days in a calendar year, you're going to become a tax resident. And what that means is it doesn't necessarily mean you have to pay taxes in Spain and back home, but you're going to have to file potentially in both places,
right.
Particularly if you're from the USA, because the USA along with Eritrea are the only two countries in the world that if you're a citizen of that country, you're paying tax.
Lifelong taxpayer.
I don't pay tax in New Zealand. I'm no longer a tax resident in New Zealand. That stopped a long time ago.
Yeah.
But for the US and the Eritreans, that really, they hold on to you. As I say, there are double taxation agreements, so you shouldn't be double taxing, but you will have to pay more.
You'll be double filing.
Double filing, exactly. Here's the thing. Sometimes I think people think that, oh, look, I'm just going to move to Spain, and if I earn some money in Canada or in the United States, I'll pay that money there and those taxes there, and I'll pay any money I earn in Spain in Spain. No. If you're a tax resident in Spain, you pay tax on your worldwide income. So you really need to figure it out. So you need to understand the broad concepts, but then you've got to talk to a tax advisor if you're concerned about this, because if you just leave it, then you might be, happy as Larry living in Spain, and 3 years later you get an email, or you get a knock, Hacienda tax company, and said, hey, our countries shared data and they saw that you haven't been paying tax. So booyakasha. So you got to be a little bit careful about that, about the tax thing. So I love tax.
Go taxes.
New t-shirt, I love tax.
Next one is concerns about language. Now you have done all your paperwork, your visa, you have your dream home, everything is perfect. Now
Paying your taxes.
You're paying your taxes. Now you need to live in Spain. So wow, do I need to learn the language? How am I going to learn the language? Will I get by without knowing a lot of Spanish at first? Now, of course, there are areas with a large English-speaking communities, but if you really want to integrate, and that's what most people want, you need to learn the language. And don't leave it until the last minute. I would just start as soon as you make the decision of living in Spain. Start learning it because it will really pay off. You need to just kind of start building your base, and then once you're here, of course, you will be able to absorb it much faster, right?
Yeah, I think some people think that one of the biggest challenges is going to be like the visa and figuring out the tax, and they kind of leave the language thing of like, of course, when I'm in Spain, I'll learn Spanish. But yeah, I mean, that's, you know, the better you can have your Spanish by the time you get here, you're just going to have a kind of a richer experience.
Exactly.
You got to get in there.
Yeah, a lot of people are very interested in moving to the really authentic place where there is no English spoken. And while that can be really fulfilling and awesome, it can also be very, very challenging. So if you're like aiming for a kind of place like that, really work in your Spanish.
You got to work on that Spanish and your thick local regional accents.
So James wrote a fantastic blog post about how to learn Spanish. We'll link to it below, we'll make sure. Now, just in case this wasn't hard enough, there are several regions in Spain that have a co-official language. So apart from Castellano, Spanish, you are going to have Valenciano or Catalan or Basque or Gallego, for example. So how present are these languages? It's going to vary from region to region. I would say that you're going to see way more Catalan in Catalonia, obviously, but way more Catalan than you will see Gallego, for example, in Galicia. That is a little bit kind of a lesser known.
So we've only scratched the surface in this video. We cover so much more in the masterclass, and if you're interested in getting on the list for a future intake, click the link in the description down below. Can't wait to be your instructor about how to move to Spain. And also click the playlist that's appearing up here so you can explore more videos and watch more videos with us about kind of life in Spain, moving to Spain, the whole kit and caboodle. All right, hasta luego, everyone.
See you soon.
Ciao.
Ciao.